Welcome to the Marketing Remix, presented by Red Door Interactive. I'm Reed Carr, CEO of Red Door Interactive. Our show is a senior-level marketer's resource for navigating our ever-evolving landscape. In each episode, in about 20 minutes, experts from different marketing disciplines representing different buyer touchpoints tackle one important marketing topic. Then, what do you need to know, and how does it affect the buyer? All right, welcome to this episode, Media, the in-house versus agency dilemma. There's an art to effective paid media campaigns. That said, many CMOs find themselves asking the following question. Does it make more sense to have those artists on my payroll as part of an in-house team, or should I outsource this tactic to an agency partner? In this episode, we'll break down the in-house versus agency dilemma, its near and long-term ramifications on the marketing industry, and where brand marketers go from here. So in this episode, we're joined by Emily Spears, paid media manager, and Aaron Turkle, paid search strategist. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to be here.
Great. So we're going to jump right in. The first question I really want to ask is right at the top line of this. So, why are these marketers even questioning an in-house versus going agency? How did we even get to this point?
Well, simply put, I think that brands are pulling media in-house because they didn't like what they were seeing from their agency partners, whether that's issues with transparency or wanting more control over the buying process or their data or how their budget's being spent. And then obviously they wanted to save money. So there's some cost efficiencies that can be gained from pulling things in-house as well.
Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think it really came into focus with some of the recent issues around, making sure that they know exactly where their ad buys are showing up, and they're not showing up next to anything they don't want to be around.
Yeah. So the second one there you're talking about is transparency. So, question on that then is from a tool set standpoint or how you manage it, how would someone in-house versus someone, an agency, how would they manage that kind of transparency? How would they know any differently?
I think in some cases, an agency and in-house is going to have the same level of control over where your ad is being shown. I don't think that either way, sometimes there's those risks with, showing up on questionable YouTube content. So either way, an agency or an in-house is going to have to make the decision not to run there. But I think just in-house, they feel like if they're the ones running it, then they at least have the knowledge of where they're showing. And I think they feel more powerful that they know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, they don't feel like they have to go through different layers at maybe the big holding company that they're talking to find that information.
So, bringing up the holding company, for example, do agencies get certain benefits or cost efficiencies because they're buying for more than one client? Are there benefits of that kind of bulk buying in that way?
Yeah, for sure. So there's definitely some cool technologies out there that have high minimums, and working with an agency, you'd benefit from having to only meet the agency minimum, not necessarily the client minimum. And so you only have to maybe just dip a toe into something rather than have to meet like a $50,000 a month minimum. But also I think the benefits mostly lie around getting access to account reps like the Facebook reps and Google reps that you have to have a certain level of spend to get access to as well.
So is that at a certain, it sounds like there's some benefits kind of to a point. At a particular, like a really high level, does it matter? Or is it just kind of like at that minimum level, you can try some new things, you dip a toe in things like, as you mentioned, but is it like, real big? Does it matter? Or is it just kind of at a minimum level?
I think at a big level, it does too, just because not only are there the minimums for technologies, but also an agencies might subscribe to more like research tool, competitive analysis tools, and all of those sorts of things that then on the client side, you'd have to pay for every single one of those. But then the agency that's split up, again, across all of their clients, or they're paying for it themselves.
Yeah, and I think also, there's a lot of benefits from the different relationships and things, and something that comes along with that is getting early access to betas and some new ad types, and being that early mover is always, there's always a benefit there. And I think something else that can't really be understated is if you work with an agency, not only are you going to get those cost efficiencies, but they're going to be working on a lot of other clients. They're going to be working on a lot of other verticals. And so they're going to be able to bring in insights from not only your own competitors, but also people who might not even be in your industry, but able to apply something that's really effective.
Yeah, so bring up effective. I mean, we're talking about performance and measuring that performance, and you're talking, the ability to compare. But more specific, I think directly. What about tracking and performance measurement? I mean, are there differences in accountability between maybe in-house versus agency?
I don't think so. Honestly, I think that the agency wants you to perform wants to drive the best performance as your in-house team would. So I don't think that that's an issue really.
Yeah, and I think maybe the only place where you could see some benefits from that is if you're able to leverage some different tools or some different aspects of tools that may not be available to an in-house team if they don't have the appropriate level of spend, or they don't have the right kind of relationships with those vendors.
Yeah, it seems like you brought up the competitive side of it. You'd have at least something more to compare it to, and then I think you maybe have a sense of how you're performing, that this is working, this isn't, particularly when you're trying some more experimental things. You might have a different perspective on it than if you're maybe in-house and really kind of isolated from seeing something that another client may be trying or having, or you might not be able to bridge over a technology, go, man, this worked really well for, 2 clients over, and this, this is, I could see how it could work well for you. That's kind of where I thought some of the performance differences might be. Challenge here is, we are in this episode, we're completely biased. We're fully an agency, so I want to make sure that listeners understand that. I mean, we don't necessarily know how the other half lives, but we do know how we do. So, I think we're driven and motivated by results, absolutely by anything else. But it is part of it. The fun is the variety of it all. So with that being said, is related to the differences between in-house and an agency perspective is what does it take to kind of ramp up on a client, get something going, sourcing talent, that sort of thing. What do we have to do on the agency side to adapt to a growing or changing environment as it relates to media?
Yeah, I went to a conference recently where there was a case study about a company that pulled all of their programmatic specifically in-house, and they had said that it took them 2 years to accomplish this. And so I think that was pretty eye-opening, just because for some companies, I guess, if you're wanting to even build your own internal platforms and it takes you 2 years to do it, then it's going to be outdated by the time that you finish it. So that's one piece. And then finding the talent could be challenging. And then even if you do find the talent, it's a matter of retaining them. Usually agencies you get to work across variety of clients in a variety of industries, and things are changing more rapidly. So you're kind of engaging your talent more often.
Well, so assuming this is changing, and because you mentioned that this conference, for example, somebody was doing it, and they took a 2-year investment to get there. So, and we know that we hear it frequently enough that people are moving in-house. I mean, what do you think, just to kind of make a prediction here, is what does this mean for our community, the advertising marketing industry, both near and long term? What do you think? What do you think is going to happen here?
I think it's going to force some increase in transparencies and just quicker and improved communication and collaboration.
Yeah, and I think the transparency is going to definitely be key, because in a lot of cases it's always been competing against other agencies, and now we're going to be competing against we have a team that could potentially do this in-house. Why are you going to be a better option here? But also taking advantage of that. So being that thought leader and saying okay, we know you have an internal team. We can work well together with that internal team and provide that thought leadership, be that kind of like one source of truth. We can help train your teams and teach them about what the whole ecosystem is. So maybe it makes sense to have a smaller team at a local level, but what that needs to ladder back up to your corporate goals and making sure that that's cohesive.
So, let's say somebody is going down that path. So clients deciding to bring their media in-house. What are some of the non-obvious things that maybe they should consider if they're going to do that?
I think for me, it's like what I've already kind of mentioned, which is considering what else the agency has access to, like the research tools and audience insights tools, competitive analysis, because they might be losing out on those if they're bringing stuff in-house. And I think that's the biggest one for me.
Yeah, and along with that, I think it's easy to say, oh, I know how to do search. I can take that in-house. But thinking about what goes into that. So do you know how to do the analytics implementation? Can you make sure that everything's being tracked correctly? Do you have the capabilities to pull the data? And do you have the level of support you're going to need to do the full spectrum of activity that can happen through an agency? So like the creative and analytics and maybe SEO considerations or content and those other things, thinking through those kinds of ramifications of taking one piece of it in-house or even the whole thing.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So one of the things I've always thought about is as far as having these kinds of activities and trying to bring them in-house is if they're non-core to the business, they'll oftentimes be an afterthought. And, for a lot of businesses, media spend is a significant budget, certainly if you're selling to consumer. I mean, B2B companies in some cases as well, but a lot of B2C companies is a big spend. So, if they are choosing to stay with an agency because they feel like, look, that's your business, that's what you guys do, and can do it well. What are some tips? If the agency, people are listening to this, are using an agency, what are some tips in making the most out of that relationship?
I think, pick up the phone and call us more often. We really want to be an extension of your team. I think that doesn't, they can't go far enough. I think that one reason why, people want to bring media in-house is they would benefit from saying that their team might sit right next to them. And some of these bigger companies, that wouldn't necessarily be the case because even if they have an in-house team, it could be in another office. But if you have a question and you wish that you could just walk over to their desk and ask them a question, just pick up the phone and call that SME and we'll answer for you really quickly. And I think that would really go a long way.
Yeah, and I definitely want to echo that. I think asking questions is something that gets overlooked. You're hiring us to be experts, and so you can treat us like experts. If you have a question about a metric or how something works, the platforms and the metrics and everything is changing all the time. So it's really helpful to have those conversations up front and make sure that everybody has a good understanding of what we're looking at, why we're looking at it, and what matters. Because that's what we're trying to do, is have those productive conversations where we're all on the same page and we're looking at the data with the same understanding of what it means.
So, I mean, it's the feedback loop communication. Obviously, with modern technology, we're able to just like you said, pick up the phone or instant message or something to that degree. What are some, some of the ways that you guys keep up on the industry that are maybe something that either in-house, if they're focused on media, or what you guys do? What are some activities you do or conferences you go to? What matters to you as keeping up on this industry?
I go to conferences. I really like webinars and subscribe to a lot of newsletters. I think that's important.
Yeah, definitely. And following industry news, it's if you set up the right parameters, you can set up like a Google News alert, so you can hear when there's a new change. You don't want to make it too broad because you'll get emails all the time. But then there's a lot of blogs and stuff that write up a lot of news about algorithm changes for search and those kinds of things as well.
Yeah, and we're lucky. Sometimes we have some reps that will pass on industry updates every Friday, for example. That's really nice.
So I notice, at the agency, so many reps kind of walking in, walking out. I mean, do clients get that same kind of attention if they're doing their media in-house, that media reps are coming in and showing their new wares? Because I mean, I see it all the time at Red Door.
I don't think so. I maybe if you have a certain level of spend, for sure. But if I was a rep, I would want to focus on an agency, because then you're focusing on so many people, so many different clients at once, rather than having to go to each individual client that agency might represent. But I know I'm biased.
That's right. Well, good. I like your bias. And that's why, as I got into this business too, is just the variety, getting to see all the different ways of attacking this problem. And you get enough reps at it, and certainly you start to see these patterns. You can be particularly efficient at it, and then start building the processes and the ways to approach these things, but get quick about it. So that being said, is talking about the speed. That was another thing you had brought up as far as why someone might bring something in-house, is you got somebody right there doing the work, and you can turn to them and say, hey, what are we doing about this? What are the kind of speed advantages that you get one way or another, whether you're in-house or an agency? I mean, what's the advantage of speed?
making sure that spend doesn't get out of control where it's not performing, and quickly optimize and update creative or whatever it might be.
And I think, the tendency to think that the speed increase can happen most likely on the in-house side is because of that opportunity to speak to someone really quickly. But like we said, I think it's an underutilized tool to just pick up the phone and give somebody a call, to work through something if something like that comes up, because we can be just as nimble and sometimes quicker than maybe an in-house team can be, because again, maybe you need to have some new content written up, or the creative needs to have a slight tweak, and we would have those teams ready to go if we needed to happen right away.
So if one of the advantages of being on the agency side is to get first looks at technology or things that are going to make us somehow better through technology, the vendors coming in and showing us their wares, what is there a category of things that we tend to get a look at, or are there things that are give us an advantage for being an agency and getting this kind of beta test or concept?
Yeah, as Aaron mentioned, some of the what that might look like is getting access to betas comes in the form of getting access to new ad types. At Red Door, we got one of our clients access to a new ad type that was in beta. Only 1 out of 6 advertisers in the country, which was really cool. And in this case, it was a ad type on Facebook that allowed people to request an appointment directly from an ad without having to go to the website or pick up the phone. And now I think that's rolled out to everyone, but it was nice that we could get our client access to that before the competition by a few months.
Yeah, and then you get a chance on something like that, I guess, to then span it over to another client real quick, or get enough reps at it where it's something that does work and we should roll it out quickly, or that it doesn't work and maybe we don't want to apply this and try to bank everything on it. So I think that does sound like an advantage.
And part of that first mover advantage is that it's a lot more cost effective to be one of those first people, and you get to have those learnings right away before maybe a lot of those 5 other advertisers don't even know that it exists yet, and you already have takeaways, and you already have an understanding of how it's going to affect the ecosystem before it's even rolled out.
So considering this a trend and knowing that we're totally biased on this whole thing because we are an agency, but how do you guys think this nets out in-house versus agency? So, if you were the CMO of a brand, what would you choose and why?
Yeah, so personally, it would depend on the size of the company and a couple other considerations. But I would defend myself in traffic court, but I'm going to hire a lawyer if it's anything bigger than that. And so it's you got there's a moment when you got to call in the big guns, and you got to make sure you have the right experts in the room for what you're dealing with. That's a good one. I like that metaphor. Emily, what do you think?
Yeah, it's tough. I agree. I think that the smaller the company, it's nice to have an agency because you're gonna have so many more eyes looking at your marketing performance. But if you're a really big company, then you might be able to afford to build all these new technologies. So I think that it depends on the size and the expertise, but I think that there's always room for an agency in some form or fashion, that it's never going to look like everything is in-house and everything is in an agency. I think we saw this just a few years ago. Marketers are really busy, and so in some cases it makes sense to have the experts at the agency work on it until people in-house kind of figure out and have enough time to understand how to leverage that. And so I think that's starting to happen now with programmatic, and it's kind of already happened with a little bit on the social side, both organic and paid, and even on email. And those things used to be always handled by agencies.
Well, okay, so look at it from another side, because technology is such a big part of our business these days. On the other side, what do you think some of the ad tech partners would say? Is a client or an agency more receptive to ad tech and media?
I think an agency.
Yeah, I would agree. I think an agency, because if the client is receptive or not, that's a one shot. And if you're talking to an agency, they might have a handful of clients that are interested in that specific technology and might be able to leverage it really well. And it's a better opportunity for them in terms of getting in front of clients who are going to be able to leverage it effectively.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's why we're seeing them all walking in our doors all the time, showing us what they've got. Okay, so we're gonna do rapid fire. This is another cut at it. So I'm gonna get a little more detailed here. and get from you guys one at a time what you think from the details of features here. So as it relates to cost efficiency, in-house or agency?
In-house.
I'm going to say in-house, but maybe you save 2% on media, but maybe you miss 10% in sales.
Yeah, okay, that's true. Oh man, that's a good one.
Ooh, interesting.
It's a tie.
So, okay, yeah, and that's the point. So it's okay. Well, and like you said, I think the typical answer is it depends. So the next one is transparency, in-house or agency?
In-house. Unless you're working with Red Door.
Yep, I agree 100% there.
Okay. Communication.
Depends on if your in-house team is actually, in the same office as you. Otherwise, it's a tie.
Yep. I would say the same thing, and then with comfort with reaching out to their agency.
Yeah. So like you said earlier, you guys got to pick up the phone. All right. Next one, in speed to market, getting things up and running.
In-house, I guess.
It's going to be a depends for me because I think there's some aspects where you could be quicker in-house, but if it's a new thing, you're always going to be quicker with an agency. Yeah.
So I heard from you new things. I heard from you if it gets real complicated and you like a lot of different kinds of resources, an agency has those kinds of resources by default. So there's a couple things there.
Yeah, I think I was picturing like speed on approvals because I think that's usually the longest time. Speed on approvals, in-house, everything else, agency.
Yep.
There you go. All right. And then adapting to or forecasting trends.
Agency.
Yeah, I would agree as well.
Yeah, I figured that one was going to be the case. I mean, so we got a lot of looks. People are dedicated to this. I planted that one as a good way to end because I do think that's one of the key things of why you do have somebody looking at it from an outside perspective, with a lot of reps looking at it from a lot of different clients' perspectives, consumer perspective, those kinds of things, because we're not so myopic on what's going on. So, I kind of figured that's where that one was going to play out. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining us. Again, this was about the debate of in-house versus agency in the space of media, which was completely biased but hopefully you guys heard a good, a really interesting, I think, unbiased lens, I thought, on some of these concepts. So again, Aaron, Emily, thank you for joining us. For those who are listening, please be sure to check out our show notes on reddoor.biz/learn. Again, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Reed.
Thank you.